Oil can make you rich. It can also take everything you love. Tonight, two women step into its shadow, one to protect a home, one to claim a legacy. In a town built on wells and whispers, only truth will decide who walks away. Cleaned up morning slides over the delta like a slow tide, heavy on tin roofs and tired hearts. Trucks cough awake, market stalls open with small chatter and big whirring, and prices climb again until people count their coins twice before buying bread. Rumors move faster than wind. A new well, a deeper seam, a contract signed in a room where no one from here was invited. They say the ground is rich and the people are poorer because the earth will not stop bleeding. Some call the oil a blessing. Others call it a wound that never closes. At the edge of town, a woman ties a black scarf to her wrist like a promise she refuses to forget. She grew up with dust on her feet and books on her lap, the kind of girl who asked hard questions and wrote the answers herself when no one would speak. Now people bring her papers folded in plastic, photos of houses that once stood where pipes now run, stories that shake in the mouth before they find shape. She listens, writes, and keeps the names the way a priest keeps prayers. One word spreads that the company plans to open a new field on land where her grandmother once sang under tall trees. She walks the paths of her childhood and speaks to each elder by name. She asks for their blessing and their truth. They show her faded receipts, old tax slips, and letters stamped with office seals that have long since changed color. She holds each paper like a small light. She knows the law says one thing in the city and another in the field. But she also knows that a ring of bodies can stop a truck long enough for someone to listen. She tells the mothers to bring water and salt. She tells the youth to bring drums and courage. She tells the old men to bring their voices, strong or weak. It does not matter, because every voice will count. Far away, in a glass tower that never knows dust, another woman begins her day by touching a thin scar on her wrist that no one else notices. It is not from a blade. It is from hunger and long years, from the sharp edge of a dream she would not put down. She fought for a seat at the table where maps are spread and futures are priced, where fields are circles on a screen and lives are lines in a report. She knows this industry rewards the bold and forgets the weak, and she refuses to be forgotten. Today the board will watch her. If she brings the new field online, they will move her up. If she fails, they will call her risk and push her aside. She reads the brief. The land is clear. The chiefs have agreed. Compensation is fair. Impact is minimal. Schedule is tight. The numbers fit like clean stones. Still, grit sits on her tongue. She asks for field notes, not the polished kind. She wants the raw pages with spelling mistakes and dirt on the edges. The files arrive. She sees a clinic with no generator, a school roof patched with sacks, a shallow grave marked by a burned cross, and a line that reads, simply, "She was loved." For a moment, the city outside the window looks like stars trapped in a jar. She writes a memo in firm, clean lines, no pre-dawn entries, no force, fresh water tests, public records of payment, a clinic generator switched on before any drill turns. A colleague laughs and calls it soft. She smiles without warmth and keeps the memo. At noon, the sun burns white and boys on bikes carry news like fire. The trucks will come before dusk to mark the ground. The activist moves from house to house gathering stories and blessings. Elders open trunks and pull out marriage photos under trees that are now stumps, birth records written in careful hand, and a map drawn by a grandfather who knew the river's moods better than he knew the city's roads. She writes each name as if writing a path home. She phones the chiefs and keeps her voice steady. She calls the radio and keeps her words simple. We will stand in a circle, we will sing, we will hold the past in our hands until the future looks us in the eye. In the tower, the executive takes the elevator down and calls her mother. They talk about a neighbor's cough, a cousin's wedding, and the price of oil for the stove. After the call, the silence feels heavy. She looks at her reflection in the dark glass and thinks of the caption under the burned cross. She reminds herself that rules save lives when power forgets them. She sends the memo again, this time marked urgent. Dusk pours into the fields and the road begins to shake. Headlights cut the orange air. The trucks arrive low and heavy, carrying stakes, chalk, and men who do not look up. The circle forms at the field's edge, a soft wall that breathes. No one lifts a hand. They begin an old song with a new edge, a tune that knows grief but still makes room for hope. The song travels beyond the circle, along the river, across the empty schoolyard where a swing moves without a child. In a control room far away, the executive watches the live feed and feels the two halves of her life pull tight, the part that learned to win and the part that learned to listen. She knows a clash will stain everything, but a delay will cost her more than a title. She closes her eyes and counts to 5, then opens them and chooses her next line carefully. In the field, the activist lifts her chin. She does not shout. She does not beg. She stands in the dust and waits for the first truck to stop. And in that breath between engine and answer, the whole town leans forward as if the future itself were trying to hear. The air tastes like metal before the rain. Clouds crawl in slow, thick layers, pressing the heat down onto the earth. The smell of oil drifts across the plain, sharp and sweet at the same time, the kind of scent that clings to your skin long after you wash. In the village, people gather around radios, murmuring names, plans, warnings. The activist stands on the back of a truck that hasn't moved in years, her scarf tied tighter now, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She doesn't speak yet. She lets the silence grow heavy enough for everyone to feel it. Then, with a voice that cuts through the murmurs like a drumbeat, she says, "No one owns the ground that remembers us." Her words are not loud, but they land like stones dropped into a well deep, echoing, impossible to pull back. The crowd answers with a single hum, a low sound that rises and folds into a chant. Far away, the executive sits in a tent made of white fabric and polished steel. Screens glow around her, showing live feeds from every corner of the field. Her assistant reads numbers, coordinates, weather forecasts, but her mind keeps drifting back to the faces she saw earlier, the villagers, the songs, the way the children looked straight into the camera as if daring her to blink first. She rubs her thumb over the edge of her pen until the plastic gives a soft crack. "Delay the drills," she says finally. Her assistant blinks, unsure if he heard right. "Just for today," she adds, her tone calm but sharp enough to cut the air. Orders move like whispers through the camp. Postpone, observe, report. Somewhere, a driver kills his engine. Somewhere else, an officer curses under his breath. In the village, the activist hears the engines go quiet. A few people cheer, others cry, thinking the battle is won. But she knows silence can be a trick. Power doesn't vanish, it hides, waits, recalculates. She tells the people to stay calm, to eat, to rest in turns. The ground is soft under her feet, still damp from last night's rain. She presses her palm to it and feels the faint pulse of water moving below. Her grandmother used to say the land speaks in quiet ways, and if you rush, you miss the truth. She closes her eyes and listens. All she hears is wind and the restless shuffling of feet. But deep down, she feels something shift, like the earth remembering its own pain. Evening crawls in. Lamps glow in the company tents, and music hums low in the distance, a generator's song pretending to be calm. The executive steps outside and watches the lights flicker across the field. Her phone buzzes with a message from the board, progress report required before dawn. She types and deletes the same sentence 3 times before sending. Community resistance continues. Awaiting peaceful solution, she knows the board will not like that word peaceful. Peace wastes time. Peace costs money. But she also knows one wrong move could set this place on fire, and fires here burn long. In the village, a boy walks up to the activist and hands her a folded paper. Inside is a photo of her own younger face, standing beside the executive at a university graduation, both smiling, arms around each other. The activist stares at it for a long time. The crowd watches her, waiting for an explanation, but she says nothing. She turns the photo over and sees handwriting. "We were supposed to change the world, not break it." Her throat tightens. She slips the photo into her pocket and looks toward the lights of the camp. For a moment, she remembers the girl who dreamed a balance of progress that didn't crush people beneath it. But that girl is gone, or maybe buried under too many disappointments to climb back out. Rain begins to fall, soft at first, then heavy. It washes dust into dark rivers that run between the tents and the feet of the protesters. The oil sheen glimmers on puddles like black glass. The activist raises her scarf over her head, and the crowd does the same, scarves and hands and banners lifted like one moving body. From the tower base, soldiers appear, their boots sinking slightly in the mud. They don't raise their guns, just stand there, waiting for an order that hasn't come yet. Between the two groups, the space feels alive, trembling with all the words not yet said. The executive stands at the tent's edge, her clothes damp, her jaw set. The ring catches the light, turning each drop into a silver thread between her and the crowd. For a heartbeat, she sees the activist through the blur. The same determined tilt of the head, the same stubborn fire she once admired. Something inside her bends but doesn't break. She turns to her staff. Tomorrow, she says, we talk. No police, no drills. Bring her here. They stare at her like she's lost her mind. If we dig through blood, we'll find nothing but ghosts, she adds. Back in the village. The activist lowers her scarf and whispers to the boy beside her. Tomorrow, we listen, he nods, unsure what that means. But he feels the shift in her voice. The rain slows, the crowd quiets, and for the first time in days, the air feels almost clean. Somewhere between the mud and the machines, two stories once bound together begin to circle back toward each other, pulled by something older than profit, older than pride. In the dark, the oil still sleeps beneath them, heavy and waiting, as if holding its breath for what comes next. The next morning begins with silence that feels heavier than thunder. The rain has passed, but the air still trembles, soaked with what was left unsaid. The field lies between two worlds: mud-streaked boots and polished shoes, hand-woven scarves and pressed uniforms. Mist curls above the ground, wrapping everything in a pale, uncertain light. Birds do not sing. Even the wind waits. The activist wakes early. Her eyes are swollen, not from sleep, but from the weight of dreams she could not hold still. She washes her face with cold water and ties her scarf tighter than before. In the cracked mirror, she sees her grandmother's reflection faintly behind her own, lips curved into that familiar half-smile that said you were made for hard days. She steps outside. The village stirs like an old body, slow, cautious. Women sweep puddles away from their doors. Men patch holes in roofs that the rain made worse. Children chase a plastic bottle down the muddy street, laughing in bursts that sound like freedom trying to return. For a brief moment, she lets the laughter touch her. A truck pulls up by the field. Not one of the big drilling machines, but smaller, cleaner, carrying boxes instead of pipes. The activist watches as the executive steps down, dressed simply in a beige coat and boots that have never met dust before today. No guards, no cameras, only a small translator and a driver. It feels wrong at first, like a trick wrapped in politeness. But the woman's face tired, unpainted breaks something in the activist's chest. The years between them hang in the air like a storm that never left. The crowd gathers. No one shouts. They simply wait, like earth waiting for the first drop of rain. The two women face each other, close enough to see the fine lines at the corners of the eyes they once knew so well. The executive speaks first, her voice steady but low. I came to listen, she says. The activist's jaw tightens. Listening won't bring back the trees, she replies. Maybe not, says the executive, but silence won't build the school either. A murmur ripples through the crowd, half approval, half suspicion. The activist studies her old friend, searching for the girl she once shared dreams with in a dorm room filled with cheap coffee and paper charts of a better future. You used to believe the land was alive, she says. The executive's eyes drop. I still do, she answers quietly, but the world stopped listening to that kind of belief. They sit under a torn canopy. A wooden table between them, papers spread out like scarce contracts, maps, petitions, photographs. The activist points to a marked zone. This is the land where my grandmother is buried. The executive nods slowly. "We can shift the line," she says. "The cost will rise, but it's possible." The translator looks surprised, but she silences him with a glance. The activist crosses her arms. "And when you finish shifting, what next? Another line? Another map?" Her voice softens. "You think you're changing things, but all you're doing is drawing new wounds." A sudden gust lifts the edges of the papers. They flutter into the air, white birds that can't find the sky. The activist stands and gathers them again, her fingers trembling. The executive helps her, their hands touching briefly cold and warm at the same time. For a moment, the field feels smaller, the noise softer. As if the world paused to see which woman would breathe first. In the camp, workers watch from a distance. Some whisper about the courage of women, others about orders that might change. The commander of the security team leans against his truck, uncertain whether to interfere. He's been to many places where peace dies in seconds. He lights a cigarette and mutters, "Maybe this time it lives." The conversation stretches into the afternoon. They argue, reason, remember. The activist tells stories of wells gone dry, of men buried in oil fires, of children coughing black dust. The executive counters with promises: new clinics, fair pay, scholarships, solar projects. Both know words are cheaper than truth, yet they keep speaking, as if somewhere inside the noise they might find a new language that both sides understand. By evening, fatigue drips into their bones. The activist stands, dusts off her skirt, and says, "You think you can fix what was never yours." The executive looks up, eyes shadowed but unyielding. "Maybe I can't," she says. "But if I stop trying, they'll send someone who won't even ask." Silence settles again, this time softer. The activist's anger flickers, not gone but dimmed by the memory of friendship and the sound of honesty rarely heard in these fields. As night returns, lamps glow from both camps. Some villagers stay by the fires, singing quietly, songs of warning and hope tangled together. The activist walks alone to the river. The water runs thick and dark, carrying flecks of oil that shimmer under the moon. She throws a stone into it and watches the ripples push the black away for a moment before it folds back over itself. She whispers, "Maybe the land isn't angry. Maybe it's just tired." At the same hour, in her tent, the executive opens her old notebook, the one from university, and finds a line written long ago. "If we must build, let it be with clean hands." She closes it slowly. Her reflection in the glass of her tablet flickers beside the live feed of the field. The protest lights like stars around a sleeping earth. She whispers the same line aloud, testing how it feels after all these years. Outside, thunder rolls far away, deep and uncertain, like the earth warning them that the story isn't over yet. Night draped itself over the delta like a heavy cloak, quiet but alive with tension. Lanterns glowed in both camps, yellow dots scattered across the black soil, flickering like uncertain promises. Somewhere a dog barked, somewhere a generator coughed, and somewhere else a baby cried, not knowing it was born into the middle of a war without bullets. The air was thick with waiting. Inside the small village school, now turned into a meeting hall. The activist sat at a wooden desk with papers, petitions, and photographs spread before her like pieces of a broken mirror. She was tired, but the kind of tired that doesn't sleep. The kind that keeps your eyes open because you know the world moves while you rest. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote the words that would define tomorrow. "We will stand, not to fight, but to remind them we exist." She paused, the pen tip leaving a small ink bloom on the page, and whispered to herself, "They must see us as people, not obstacles." Across the field, in a white temporary office lit by sterile lamps, the executive read through the reports of the day. Each line was a quiet: wound delays, community unrest, profit warnings. Yet hidden among the numbers were things that didn't fit. Letters from field engineers saying the villagers were feeding them. Notes about children sharing umbrellas with workers during the rain. Humanity leaking through cracks in protocol. She closed the laptop and looked out the tent flap. In the distance, she could see the faint glow of the village fires. It looked almost beautiful, almost peaceful. But she knew peace could vanish like smoke in the morning. She pulled out her phone and recorded a short message, her voice low but steady. Tomorrow, we announce the suspension. No drills until a joint council is formed. Let them decide what the ground gives and takes. She stopped the recording. Her throat tightened. She knew the board would come for her career like wolves for a weak deer. Still, something inside her had already chosen. Some victories are too small to see, yet they are the ones that save what's left of a soul. Dawn crept in pale and slow. Mist crawled from the river, wrapping itself around the machines, softening their sharp edges. Villagers gathered again, but the fear felt different now, less fire, more breath. The activist stood in the circle, her scarf damp with dew. Children sat on the ground tracing shapes in the mud, unaware that their world was being redrawn above their heads. The trucks remained still, their engines off, their lights dim. It felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. The executive walked toward the circle, papers in her hands, not as armor, but as an offering. She stopped at the edge where the mud began and waited. The activist met her halfway. Neither spoke for a long time. The crowd watched, every blink slow, every heartbeat loud. Then the executive unfolded the paper. "The company will halt all drilling here," she said. "A council of villagers and engineers will review the land rights. We'll invest in water projects and repair the clinic roof." Her voice did not tremble. The activist looked at her, eyes sharp with disbelief, then soft with something that looked like memory. "And what do you want in?"